So we're not far off from the beginning of the final season of Fruits Basket, and what an emotional rollercoaster this gem of an anime has become. I think it's safe to say that the majority of fans just aren't ready for this show to be over and done with, but yet here we are, heading into the third season, and just like last year, I thought I'd get you emotionally prepared for all the wild moments that are about to go down in the ultimate finale of Fruits Basket. The third season is going to be adapting the final stretch of the manga, which spans over 8 volumes. During Season 2, creative liberties were taken where elements of the story were adapted in a slightly different order than in the manga to give a more streamlined version of events. That means there was some material in later volumes that's already been covered in Season 2, and little to no material in the past volumes that hasn't already been covered. So this means there'll be a little less for Season 3, but I think it's probably for the best. It let Season 2 have a lot of development, and also meant that Season 3 is going to cut down on that filler and have a fast-paced, jam-packed emotional thrill ride, ready to break your soul. That being said, let's jump into some of the plot points. Now, after the shocking revelation that Akito's a woman, I feel like the anime is probably going to start back up with that. There's going to be further revelations that not only Kureno, but Shigure, Hattori, and Ayame knew that Akito was ordered to be raised male by her mother Ren. Toru, obviously shocked and distressed by all this, later decides to tell Uotani that Kureno is a Soma, but that he's promised to another woman, seeing that he's currently given up on his dream of being with her. We'll also finally get to see the conversation between Shigure and Kureno, where they enter into an argument about how they've both handled the situation and by consequence treated Akito. Shortly after this, Shigure will visit Akito and enter into another confrontation where he admits he slept with her mother from the sheer jealousy of Akito's relationship with Kureno, which of course leads them to sleep together. Pretty messed up stuff. Toru, knowing that Rin's also investigating how to break the curse, attempts to find her in order to discuss this new revelation about Kureno and Akito, but she can't find her. We see Hiro reveal to Kisa that the reason she was attacked by Akito was because of his feelings for her. And this leads into him also revealing that he saw Akito attack Rin because of her relationship with Hatsuharu. And this causes Haru to confront Akito, who denies any wrongdoing. Meanwhile, Kureno finds Rin held captive in the Cat Zodiac room and comes to tell Akito that she's been sent to hospital. But Akito continues to be indifferent and justifies her actions. Whilst in hospital, Rin recalls that Ren, Akito's mother, promised to reveal how to break the curse if she simply stole a black box from Akito. But Akito caught her, which resulted in her confinement. Shigure then visits and tells her that Ren was lying, but not to worry, as he believes the curse is going to eventually break, considering that all the Zodiacs are alive together at the same time. Toru, listening in on this, then desperately demands Shigure to give her a time frame for this, showing that she's desperate for the curse to break before their graduation so Kyo can be free. This is a pretty key moment as it pretty much confirms to Toru and to everybody else that the Zodiac member that she really cares about the most is Kyo. Toru and Shigure then discuss the purpose of the Cat Zodiac, which is pretty much to serve as the other Zodiac member's scapegoat. And I think this is where you'd cross back to Kyo, who reflects on his guilt for not telling Toru that he knew her mother. We learn of her mother's history through Kyo's flashbacks, where she told him all about meeting Toru's father, how they fell in love, and how he died of pneumonia. She reflects on how grief-stricken she was, and that she nearly took her own life until she remembered how Toru needed her, and how she came to the realization that everyone has the desire to be needed. Kyo then dreams of 2 bloodied women, Kyoko and his own mother, arguing over his fate. He then comes to the reasoning that he needs to keep Toru at bay to protect her from himself. Then he visits Kyoko's grave on the 2nd anniversary of her death, where he meets Toru's grandfather. And this gives the audience an elaboration on Toru's character and how she acts so politely in order to imitate her own father. When Kyo asks Toru about this, she admits that she did it in order to replace her father in her mother's eyes. Overcome with the memories of how lonely she was as a child, Kyo hugs her, unable to restrain the love he feels for her. Yuki, awkwardly watching on, decides he wants to spend more time with Machi and Kakaru, and in a moment of weakness brings them to Ayame's shop, accidentally forcing Machi to be dressed up by Mine and Ayame. Yuki gifts Machi with an apology present and an offer to see more of each other over the summer. With their bond continuing to grow, Kakaru invites Yuki over for dinner to meet his girlfriend. And here we learn that her father was killed in the accident with Kyoko. And this caused Kakaru to hate Toru for some time, believing that she thought she was the only one who deserved sympathy after her mother's death. This later leads to Kakaru meeting with Toru and apologizing for feeling this way. And of course, as usual, she forgives him and is grateful to him for bringing Yuki out of his shell. As the season progresses, not only Yuki, but all the other Zodiac members as well, notably the younger ones, recognize the growing affection between Toru and Kyo, with Momiji even going as far as to threaten Kyo to act on his feelings, otherwise he'll try and steal her away. Meanwhile, Toru reflects with Kagura that she feels her claims in wanting to free all the Somas is a deception, because what she really cares about is Kyo. And this causes Kagura to encourage her to share those feelings with him. But when the opportunity arises, she finds she lacks the courage. Back at the Soma estate, we delve more into the history of Akito's mother through the eyes of Shigure. When probed about the box Ren asks Rin to steal, Ren reveals that the box belonged to Akira, the previous head of the Soma family. In flashbacks, we learn that Ren was a maid who fell in love with Akira, and once she was pregnant with his child, the living Zodiac members, Shigure, Hattori, Ayame, and Kurino, revealed that she was carrying the unborn god of the Zodiac. And this is when the dynamic began to shift between Ren and Akira, with Akira becoming more interested in the child than herself. When Akito was born, Ren was even more dismayed as she felt that she didn't produce a male heir for Akira. Angered, she denied the true nature of the Zodiac power and ordered for Akito to be raised as a boy. After these revelations, Shigure tells Ren that she should have the box, and that she was the one who was in love with Akira. We then shift to Akito's dreams, where Akira tells Akito that the Zodiac promise is special, and that because of the bond, she's not going to feel any sadness or loneliness. Akito reflects on the fact that Akira's reassurance and explanation of the Zodiac bond is the reason she's so confident in it, and therefore confident in her belief that her life is not going to change. However, as soon as she awakes, she feels that Momiji's curse is broken. And this is the moment where things start to turn up a notch and spiral out of control to the point that we're left with every episode essentially on a cliffhanger. Due to the curse beginning to break, Akito will talk with Kurino and explain how she tried to mold Yuki to prove that the Zodiac bond is strong. And this is the point where Ren comes flying in, ready to hold Akito at knife point, demanding the box Akira left behind. Ren opens the box, and she realizes that it's empty. Akito then picks up the dropped knife and attempts to attack her mother, but she's stopped by feeling Hiro's curse break. And this causes Akito to turn on Kurino, blaming him as he was the first Zodiac whose curse broke, and she stabs him. Meanwhile, at the same time, we have the emotional wrecking ball of Toru finally plucking up the courage to confess her love to Kyo. However, this doesn't go smoothly as he feels guilty for her mother's death, confessing that he saw her die and he had the opportunity to save her, but he didn't out of fear that he'd transform. He reveals that he blames himself for her death, the same way he blames himself for his mother's death. He goes on to say that Kyoko's last words to him were, "I won't forgive you," and asks her how she could possibly forgive him if he can't forgive himself. However, Toru defies all this and says regardless of her mother's judgment, she loves him. Kyo then runs away with Yuki and Toru following him. However, Toru gets caught up with Akito, who's still brandishing a knife. Akito tells Toru that she must feel triumphant and that she's won, alluding to the fact that the curse is beginning to break. Toru, however, reflecting on the fact that she still loves Kyo despite his rejection, looks to empathize with Akito, remarking on how she must feel lonely. Toru offers a fresh start to Akito, offering her hand and asking if they can become friends. Before Akito can act, the cliff that they were standing on crumbles with Toru falling. Akito then cries out for help with Shigure and Yuki rushing to aid Toru. Kyo rushes back, learning about her accident, and approaches Toru where she lies unconscious with Yuki. She wakes up just long enough to tell them that she's going to be okay. Kyo, overwhelmed by the tragedy, kisses her before she goes to the hospital. Later that night, Yuki arrives back at the house and confronts Kyo for not going to the hospital to be with Toru. This results in an all-out brawl where the two finally air their insecurities and admiration for each other, where ultimately Yuki tells Kyo that he can make Toru happy in a way that he can't. Kyo, still traumatized by the deaths of his mother and Kyoko, believes that he needs to protect Toru in a way that's impossible. Yuki, however, reassures him that he can't protect Toru like a superhero, he just needs to be there for her. Despite this resolution though, Hanajima and Uotani, now aware of Toru's fall and the rejection from Kyo, refuses to let him visit when she's in hospital. Whilst at the hospital, many Zodiac members come to visit Toru, including Akito. Momiji convinces her that to make up for her behaviour against all the Zodiac members, she has to cherish Kurino and Toru, as they've both been significant reasons for the curse breaking. Seeing as Kyo can't visit Toru in the hospital, he visits his birth father to admit his guilt in the death of his mother. But, similar to Yuki in the past season, he refuses to be controlled or locked away. His father flies into a rage, and this triggers memories of how his father not only mistreated him, but his mother too, alluding to the fact that Kyo's curse wasn't the primary reason for his mother's unhappiness. Meanwhile, Akito orders for the cat prison to be taken down, and both Akito and Kyo reflect that they need to move on from their fathers. Despite this, confronting his father was still distressing for Kyo, and Hiro and Kisa find Kyo throwing up in the street. Kisa comes down to his level to check on him, which leads Kyo to see Toru's face reflected in Kisa. Kyo continues to try and visit Toru, but he's turned down not only by Hanajima and Uotani, but Yuki as well, as they fear it will distress Toru after their last meeting where he rejected her. At the hospital, Akito meets Uotani and Hanajima where she tells them about stabbing Kurino. Uotani in particular can sense that Akito is actually a woman, seeing that she's still keeping up the facade at this point, and that Akito is the woman that Kurino was promised to. Kurino finally tells Uotani that he's going to leave Akito, and Uotani promises to go wherever he does. Toru's finally discharged from the hospital, but she spots Kyo and runs away, the latter chasing after her. When he catches up, he apologizes and tells her that he does love her. He kisses her, and Toru asks if she can hug him. They do, and Kyo doesn't transform. As Akito feels Kyo's curse break, she remembers visiting Toru in hospital, and she reflects to her father that she's stepping forward despite her fears. And this is when the curse for the rest of the Zodiac members begins to break, causing a rush of emotion and tears. Yuki's with Machi when his curse lifts, and in his grief, he kisses her. And then we get a retelling of the Zodiac story, but this time the gods depicted as lonely and selfish, befriending the cat as the first of all the Zodiac animals. In a final gathering of all the Zodiacs, Akito notably comes dressed in a woman's kimono. She apologizes for all the grief she's caused them all, and that she's going to live her life as a woman from now on, continuing on as head of the family. She tells all the members that they're free to live their lives as they wish, and also comes to the realization that she's in love with Shigure. Rin, however, doesn't really forgive Akito and questions Toru how the others can readily do so. And this leaves that bittersweet feeling that despite the curse breaking, not all these wounds are going to heal very quickly. We learn that Yuki's applying to a university far away, and Kyo and Toru decide to travel to another city for Kyo to train at a different dojo than Kazuma's. As they visit her mother's grave, we get Kyoko's flashback just before she died, where she regrets leaving Toru alone, and that her last words, "I won't forgive you," were actually cut off, and she couldn't finish saying, "if you don't protect Toru." At the end of graduation, Shigure moves in with Akito, and each Soma has flashbacks of memories with Toru. Yuki thanks Toru for helping to raise him and being a maternal figure in his life, and that he enjoyed the time he spent with her. In an epilogue, we discover Toru and Kyo's granddaughter searching for them, finding that they're on a walk together holding hands. Altogether, that wraps up into a pretty emotional final season. There's going to be so much to enjoy, and I wonder whether we'll be teased for any bonus adaptations, as there's the special Three Musketeers mini arc and a smaller self-contained story following the next generation in Fruits Basket Another. It'll be hard to say goodbye to this series, but I have to say, if all things go as well as the previous two seasons, we'll have a beloved, perfect anime you can revisit for years to come. But now I want to throw it to you guys. What are you looking forward to most in the upcoming season? Do you think they'll adapt any other further works? Make sure to leave a comment and let me know.